All right. Hello. Welcome to RMR Training Podcast. My name is Ryan. Joined today by Meg Jacoby with a big gulp coffee right off the jump. She's got like a
Dunkin', not sponsored yet.
We're back. We're back in New York. Meg Jacoby.
Oh yeah,
Dunkin' Donuts.
I'm in a sweater, guys.
In a sweater.
Puma. It's Puma. Oh, wrong side. Puma.
Ooh, it's fresh too. Looks good.
In sweaters now. It's 15 degrees outside.
So today in the episode, we're going to talk about the back half of the race, some mistakes that you should avoid. A couple weeks ago, I was on talking about the front four, and we're going to touch on the back four, just mistakes that we've come across in our own training and racing and things that you should avoid. But first, we're talking a little bit off air, just kind of Meg's back in the mix, how she's feeling, what's going on. So how are things? We went through last episode, just like big dump about like what's going on with you. So now,
this is a positive. This is a positive one because we made a lot of people cry last week. Got a lot of messages. People were like, even men were like, I was tearing up in the gym listening to you. And, so this is a positive one today. I did 200 push-ups.
Woo.
I did some core work. I did pull-ups. I did some banded tricep extensions. We're able to start to do some light upper body. Not a ton of weights yet, but body weight, some lightweight stuff. And I feel like I feel genuinely like I did not have a surgery at all. Which is kind of crazy because I'm only just over 3 weeks post-surgery. Thursday was 3 weeks. So it's pretty crazy, but this is the positive side where it's hard to wrap your brain around when everyone's like, you're going to bounce back so fast. You're going to heal so quick. You're going to be back out there. And in the moment, you feel like there's no way. Like I'm done. Like the season's over. Like if I'm lining up at Worlds, I'll be lucky and I'll probably be just shooting to finish. Like it's really hard to wrap your brain around that at the time because you're in like full panic mode. And so anything anyone's saying to you that's like positive, it's really hard to believe. But now that I'm like kind of through that and through the worst of it, where I was just laying on the couch like a potato for 2 weeks, it really is like that's setting in. Like I'm definitely going to be ready to race. At what capacity, we still don't know, but I feel like it will be very high, just given how I feel. When I start my rehab in 2 weeks, I fly back to Germany to do rehab with my neurologist and their team. And I can tell, and just from the feedback they've been giving me, I'm way ahead of what they expected. Right. After the surgery, it's very normal to start having some nerve pain again. So I was a few days after I started having some bad nerve pain just at night when I would lay down. And 2 weeks ago, I was really having a hard time even like sleeping again. My foot was super numb. It just felt super strange. And that's completely gone. It's been over a week since I've had any of that at night. So I'm sleeping through the night. I have no pain anymore. My foot strength is totally coming back. Like I can push off my toes again because that was like really strange. Like I couldn't. And that was a huge sign that we knew how bad the disc was too. Cause like I couldn't lift my toes. I couldn't push off my foot.
Oh, damn.
So that was like yes.
That? Oh,
yeah.
Geez.
So when they were doing my testing, they were like, yeah, this is a bad sign because it would only been 4 weeks from when they felt like the herniation happened. And already I was having significant weakness in my foot. So they were like, this is definitely really, really impacting the nerve. So that was another sign that they were like, you need to do this. And the sooner the better. And I'm so happy we did it that way because if we just tried to manage pain for a few months, the fluctuations, like I've been through that before and it would come and go constantly. Like every couple months I'd be back to square one, then it would go away. It'd be good for a few months and then it would happen again. And so when you're an athlete and you have to get back to competing, going through the ups and downs of that was just it just didn't seem like the right decision. Like putting it off for potentially the inevitable, why waste time? So I'm so happy we did it and I'm feeling way better. So, and I'm getting the pump back because God, I mean, you guys know, if you know me, you know, I love having muscles. I love being one of the most ripped girls out there in HYROX. And I was kind of like, we're all a little intense in how we view ourselves. And I was looking in the mirror the other day and I was like, my arms have not been this small in years, literal years. I'm looking at my triceps. I'm like, oh my God, where are they? And my back, I'm like flexing my back. I'm like, holy shit, this is sad. So
you're getting some upper body. That's exciting.
Getting some upper body.
Will you be able to like bench?
I don't think for a little while. It's more like, actually, bench press probably. The dumbbell stuff is like the concern at the moment because they don't want me like having to bend or like be.
Oh, I see.
Anything bending at the waist is not great, but like a bench press is flat and it'd probably be okay.
You like try
I don't know.
bar at first, maybe. Like,
I was actually thinking that, and I'm sure when I am able to do lower body, I'll probably have to start on the Smith machine also, just because it helps to. It's not so load focused. It kind of relieves that. So
like
that'll
squat.
probably, yes, exactly. So I'll probably be on stuff like that for a little bit.
What are you looking forward to
which
most
is fine.
Getting back? What is like the thing that you're like, damn?
Benching, of course.
Gotta be benching.
Benching, of course.
Gotta be back quick too.
It will be. I think it will be. But yeah, it's like I'm doing sets of 20 push-ups today, like nothing. And I'm like, all right, we're fine. It's fine. It'll be, I'll look like my normal self in a month. Totally. You know what I mean? Totally. So started loading up the creatine again today because I'm like, we gotta get these gains. I gotta get this pump going. So
back. That's great. This is old school talk. Just about the pump.
Is benching helping your HYROX? I don't know, but it's fucking cool. So
we can start there with the burpee broad jumps.
Yeah,
I have put in some bench recently just because I think in terms of, I don't know, sports specific, probably not. You're right. But like if trying to put on a little bit of muscle, like for upper body, for the front, it's like the best way to overload things.
For sure. I think overhead press, I think if for like compound movements, there are like like you said, with burpee broad jumps, like you do have to push off the ground. So if you can be explosive in that way, it can probably help that movement. But I do think the shoulder endurance is super important for wall balls. Mm-hmm. So I think if you can build those things up, and it doesn't have to be super high weight, but it could be more like volume focused. If you can get that muscular endurance from some of those exercises, I have always believed that's a huge reason why I'm the goat of wall balls. And I will say that because I'm owning that shit. You know what I mean? But that's a huge strength for me. And I think it comes from having that really explosive power in stuff like bench press and overhead press and just the shoulder strength. So it's super important.
So for burpees in particular, what do you see in racing or training? What's one thing that is a big mistake that you see people making?
I think honestly, I think not training it enough. I think I think burpee variations are great. But I do think there are some that are less ideal than others. I think you have to incorporate in your training the burpee with the jump. And it can be over a box. It can be over a bar. It can be obviously burpee broad jumps itself. It's the most specific. But I think you have to incorporate the jump portion because I think that's what's most taxing about it. So just doing burpees, it's like, yes, you're going to gain like the cardiovascular side of the movement. But I do think you need to put emphasis on the jumping. If you're not able to jump like a decent amount of a distance too, it's that many more repetitions. So I think you got to even just practice jumping, period. Not even with the burpee. I think doing standing broad jumps or doing like 5 in a row where it's like land, jump again, or a lot of single leg stuff, a lot of like plyos that are more explosive, box jumps, stuff like that. I think you need to incorporate that in training too to help with the burpees.
Yeah, I think the jump is an interesting thing to kind of touch on, but the not training enough, I think makes sense because and needing it to be with the jump, just for the coordination part of it, right?
Like, and then that too,
the athleticism, like they're like, this is an incredibly athletically demanding sport in terms of like coordination, but when it does present itself, you want to make sure that you can do the movements without needing without being inefficient for it. So I think that is smart to make sure that you are training the patterns to like get to the ground and then get up and then immediately move into some sort of dynamic movement in any direction, really.
Yeah. And I think too, when you don't practice that aspect enough, we see a lot of people having to pause when they do stand up before they jump, and they're killing. It's way more energy. You're killing your momentum that way. And I think that the more you practice the jump side with the burpee, the better off you're going to be, because you're already taxed at this point in the race. So you have to work on these things in practice, because if you're not, like, it's going to be that much worse for you in the race. You're already exhausted, you know? So.
And that's where I was thinking for a mistake that I was going to share is like the resting position during the burpee, if it is like where it should be, because I think it's fine. Like I think in this part of the race, like having some sort of way to rest while continue to move is very important for the majority of the field, because those first three stations are so demanding, so that when you get there, you're like, oh my goodness. So like resting at the top of like standing just doesn't make sense to me. You know,
Okay.
it's either like, because when, like you said, like when you land and you come and like when you come to the top of the burpee, like you need to be jumping.
That's true.
And
so then when like you have the momentum, you jump, you land, and then it's way easier to go down into the next rep. Yeah.
To go down. Right. So like,
my thing with that is if I rest in the laying portion, like I don't think I'll get up.
Just to like face down.
I'll just be like, this feels great. And I'm just going to lay here for a second.
I kind of hit it in like the crouch before I go down. I like land and I'll be like crouched over, like almost like hands on my knees, but like, you know, not.
I think that makes sense. Definitely.
That's where
I think if you start resting in the laying on the ground position, you're just going to end up chilling there for a little bit too long.
It's definitely efficient to lay down there.
It is. You know,
it
feels like, nice.
But you might but psychologically you might be like, I'm dying. I'm going to bed now.
Yeah. This is definitely a part of the race where I think this is probably the part most people struggle with the most. So you got to get yourself through it. You know what I mean? So just taking each rep one at a time and not thinking so much that it's like 100 or 80 meters. It's 80 meters, right? How did I just screw that up? Not thinking about how far it is and just taking it like one rep at a time is also going to help you. And if you can kind of have an idea of how many reps total it takes you to get through 80 meters and counting or counting down, I think I like the psychological aspect of counting down. I think that can also be a helpful tool here.
Another mistake, I think it's worth noting, and you kind of mentioned it on the jump part, is not emphasizing that jump. And I've gone back and forth on this because the jump part is very taxing, but you just do less burpees if you can jump further.
Exactly.
You just do less burpees, and that's really what we're trying to do. So even if it's like slower, like I think I would prefer someone to step back, step up, and then really emphasize that jump than to like rush to get to the ground.
Me too.
So
Me too. And I would rather like you were saying, have the cadence be slightly slower, but being able to gain more distance on each set, because I think personally that also helps keep my heart rate down a little bit more. So I'm very methodical in my cadence. And I've been told this, like, you look like you're so in control. And it's like, yes, because like when I practice this, I'm very much emphasizing the cadence of it. So every rep is the same pace and it's smooth the whole way through. And I think a lot of people send it the first few a little too fast, and then they're like, oh shit. And then they have to stop and break and rest for longer than maybe needed if they just slowed it down just slightly. It's different in doubles, of course, but in a solo race, you got to really be paced and really smart about your pacing. So that would be my tip. I think people go out too hot initially on the burpee broad jumps and then suffer for it in the second half of the station.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point.
And that's tough.
That's a good point. Like, and giving yourself like 3 to 5 reps to just be like, okay, where am I? Just so you aren't spending it and getting it over your head. Yeah, being measured up front. That's a good one too. Not having the pacing down. That's a good one for sure.
Yeah.
What else with burpees? Is that it? Any other mistakes that you avoid?
I've never gotten any like warnings or, well, I mean, I've gotten a warning on, from the hands. Cause sometimes you fall forward on accident and then your hand, like you land and you're a little off. And then you like immediately go down like unintentionally, and then your hands are a little too far, and they know it's not on purpose, but I've never gotten a no rep on burpees myself. So
I don't think I ever have technically either. No, just like a forceful warning. Yeah. And it's usually the hands.
Yeah.
And now it's that we can't
land uneven. You have to land even too on the jump. That's the new rule, like that they implemented this season, that people were getting very confused. You can't be staggered on the takeoff or the land. If that makes sense. That is hard, to be honest.
And I was being told in Dallas, they're like 2-foot takeoff. And I was like, I am absolutely not jumping off of one leg right now.
The fact that they feel like they have to say that if you're jumping off 1 foot,
what?
I think you're hurting yourself.
Jump? Yeah.
Like I haven't done triple jump since middle school. So like, that's not going to go well for me. You know what I mean? My 1 foot broad jump is way worse than my 2. So
like, I would never jump off of 1 foot. I think because my feet weren't exactly staggered, they were calling it a 1 foot takeoff, which I don't think is the same thing.
Yeah, I don't either.
And when it is that way, like, so I kind of started when they were cracking down heavily on the stagger, right? And like, they did like, I was starting to stagger opposite. I was like taking my first foot all the way up to my hands, and then my trail leg would come to maybe to like where my heel was on my front foot.
So it was behind.
It was behind. So I was making sure that I wasn't like
exceeding
on accident. Right. Exactly.
Because when the foot that's you're bringing up, it is hard to match that with the foot that's already planted.
It is when you can't see
for sure. When you can't, because you're not looking down, you're looking ahead of you because you're about to jump. Yeah.
So I was doing that, and I was like, all right, I can't. And so I started doing it the opposite, and I think they're calling that no good.
Yeah. They want it like exactly toes even on both sides, which I guess I understand, because if your foot was behind, one was a little behind the other, then it's going to be harder maybe for you to also land evenly. Is my guess on why that's their issue. But if it's behind the toes, I guess I don't really see why that's a problem. I think it should only be an issue if it's in front of where your other foot was, because then that's cheating an inch. You know what I mean? Or whatever.
Right. I guess like could you gamify the 2 foot landing, like the not staggered landing, like really like stretch one leg out and like land and like bring your other foot to where it is. It just seems like it would be hard to do.
It would just be like more effort
to try to like cheat it like that. Right.
Yeah. But I mean, hey, there are people that are doing it.
We'll try it. It ain't cheating.
We've seen some crazy things.
It's true. All right, let's move on to the row. So there's a couple pieces, and I always preface this when talking about there's a lot of good rowing resources out there.
Yes. We love our guy from Row Along.
Erg Army does stuff. Yep. So
shout out, y'all.
They're great. So if you're looking for a straight up rowing resource, like they are better than we are. We don't have like a rowing background, but we row a lot and we see a lot of stuff. So we've been playing
and we work hard at it.
We work hard. We try to figure it out. Like I know you've done a lot with your form, and I'm consistently kind of tweaking things to make sure that it's like as efficient as possible. So I guess what is the one thing you'll see people do or that you've done that's a mistake on the row?
I think rowing in HYROX is different than regular rowing, and because of the running. So if we want to optimize the running, we don't necessarily want to be using our legs and the leg drive so intensely as we would if we were regular rowing. When I'm rowing in practice, I am pushing through my legs a ton, but in this race, I have to run after. So we want to conserve a little bit of that leg energy. So that's where our stroke rate is probably a little bit higher in the race and we're making it a little bit more aerobic than we would in practice, where we're using a little bit more muscular dominance with the leg drive. So I think that's a mistake people make, is that they are still using their legs probably a little too much, and then it's impacting their run after. And if you really want to optimize this race, we know the running is the most important aspect. So we want to optimize by playing the stations smart so that we can run most efficiently after. So I would say just that. It's like most of us are using the row as a recovery. And I think that's they kind of tie together. Like you can't win the race on the rower.
Right.
But I think you can lose a lot.
Definitely.
So, and it's the same with the ski erg. It's like, you're not going to win the race on the ski erg, but you can lose it on the ski erg. So it's like kind of understanding the sweet spot of how muscularly taxed you want to get, how aerobic you want to make this, and then how it's going to impact the run after.
So with that, because I agree, right? Like figuring out where that sweet spot is to manage it while still feeling okay and not losing a ton of time, but also not killing yourself. So when you're talking about, the stroke rate going up, I agree. I'm usually closer to 30 than
yes,
not on this.
Same.
And like if I was just doing a regular session, trying to be as powerful as possible, whatever, probably like 25, 26.
Yeah.
So for you, are you changing your form? Like, are you doing less legs, more back, or are you just pressing
definitely.
less hard?
I'm definitely using the backswing and my upper back a lot more because that's a huge strength of mine. So, that was actually something that our friend from Rolong has given me a lot of kudos for, because I figured out like, okay, I'm using my strength. I'm using my legs a little bit less, but I'm using my upper body just a tiny bit more than I would in a normal like row session. And that works really well for me. And again, it is a slightly few repetitions more than what I would be doing in like practice. So like when I did my 2K row time trial recently, I was at 27. And I'm like 28, 29 usually in the HYROX race. So it's not that much different, but it's like just enough. And of course the pace is significantly different from a 2K to the 1K in the race, but it's like just enough where it's a little more aerobic instead of being, where I'm gassing my legs out.
Yeah.
So
you are putting more of an emphasis on
definitely
swinging those hips open.
Yes, exactly. So I'm really like opening my core. Like I'm emphasizing like the legs, then the core, and then the pull a lot. And so you'll see me leaning back just a little bit more than I probably would in like a normal row practice in the race.
And that lengthens the chain. It's a longer pull then, so you can get a little bit more out of it when you're leaning back.
For
a
sure.
little bit more at the back of it too. To make
the caveat is your rebound has to be fast. Right? Your rebound has to be like quicker if you're going to kind of do that, because otherwise it's like going to slow you down a lot, I think.
Yeah. And that's something I'll see people do is like kind of pause, pause at their chest. And it's like a thing that I tell people to right away is like kind of come back and like quick touch and then immediately straighten your arms.
For sure.
And then as soon as those hands get past your knees, then you start to kind of bend, then you bend, right? Like a deadlift. Like if you're going to do deadlifts for reps, you want to make sure it goes straight down. Then you bend it as it gets past your knees. So that pause at the top, I don't understand. And like, then you're under more tension, right? Like if you're paused back here, like you're flexed through like your upper back, through your biceps, and then you're holding it, which is like restricting blood flow. It's just less efficient. You want to be the most efficient.
The other thing is like when people let the handles go way below their knees. Do you know what I'm saying? Where they drop it super low. So like when you're taught how to row, like the goal is to keep the chain in the center of the square, like perfectly the whole time.
Like not wobbling.
Not wobbling, not going like these because again, it's just like you're losing time, you're losing tension on the chain, and then you're losing, seconds. So it's just not efficient. So I think that is another thing I see a lot of people kind of make a mistake of, where like they're doing that pause and then they drop the handles really low and then they're doing
and they gotta pick it back up. It's like a circle.
Exactly.
And like maybe that's fine if you can guarantee that will be the same. But I always think of it as like a free throw, right? Like the least amount of stuff you can do, the more it will just be predictable. So if you're like looping your like the handle down, like what are the chances? The chances are greatly reduced that it will be in the exact same spot as instead of you just pushing it right back to that same spot.
Yeah.
So I agree with that. It's just like kind of, I don't know why. I think that's just like kind of looks cool. It's kind of like the same thing when people like kind of bring their arms out on the ski. It kind of like looks cool. It's like, like you're not
both
doing
of those
anything.
I think come more from CrossFit.
Yeah. Totally.
You know what I mean? Because when I'm like in the CrossFit gym and I'm like looking around, that's how I see people rowing.
agree.
And same with like the winged out a little elbows on the skier. It's more like coming from maybe the CrossFit. And again, no hate on it. It's just that they have so many movements to master. They're probably not getting so nitty gritty on some of them. You know what I mean? Because they have to have 500 things in their arsenal at all times. So
and that could be also the case, right? Depending on like what the workout even is. Like if a wider, like if for whatever reason, like the elbows in would be like detrimental to whatever movement they have later in a workout, or ours are sequential, right? Like we can be
true.
As efficient. We know exactly how it should be because we know what's coming next. So they might need
and
to
we have
like,
less movements to just in the race, right? So it's easier for us to get more intense on form and technique and efficiency because we only have 9 movements to master in this one specific
event.
Every
day. Right. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So
on the row part 2, yeah, like early arm bend, the same kind of thing, right? It's like just like bending your arms in as your way to stay connected to the handles instead of like your lats and your back. It's just, again, less efficient. It's going to cause more restricted blood flow, and like you're just over gripping when you don't need to.
Definitely. So I've always been taught you should like honestly barely have to hold on to the handlebar.
You're like in your fingers.
Yeah, like just really light. And so if you aren't able to do that, then something's maybe off. You know what I mean?
Pulling probably too much.
Pulling too hard
with your wrist. Like, like you don't need to do that. And sometimes, and often I see people opening with their hips too soon.
Too early.
Yeah. So that'll be like the first movement that they do. And then they're just not getting anything out of their legs, or they're really reducing how much drive they're getting from their legs. I probably see that more often. It's because it's nuanced, right? It's like hard to really see. But I see people, their first movement is their chest moving backwards instead of their butt moving backwards. And like if you're driving through your legs, your butt should go backwards. And if you're opening your hips, like your chest is going to go backwards. So like, I guess those are some things to keep note of.
Yeah.
Other than that, row, just keep your cool. And most times I feel like if people have survived, are in good enough fitness to like hammer the first 4 stations and then get on the row and then screw up the pacing, that'd be like crazy. You know?
Yeah.
But it can happen. I've definitely blown up on the row just like out of bad tactics. But I think most people, when they get to the row, they're going to be like, I'm just going to survive this.
Definitely.
On the farmers.
Farmers.
What are you seeing? What are some mistakes?
Well, this is like pretty straightforward. I guess I would say, I always think it's a little funny when people are like, there were so many turns and it was like 3 lanes in the regular race. And I'm like, that's not that bad.
I know.
Practice the turns. I think you need to. Usually in the regular races, you get like some nice long straightaways. Sometimes it's 1 length. Sometimes it's 2 big lengths. But if you do get a little ziggy zaggy, that is way more emphasis on the shoulders, I think, when you do the turns. So I would just say really practice that in practice. Like when I do my farmer carry, I'm practicing it like I'm on the grid every time. So I'm doing 10 turns, 20 meters each direction, because that is what makes it more difficult. Going straight and holding them is not as hard as having to turn 10 times. So I'd say like make it harder for yourself in practice. In some ways, I think sometimes do it heavy for shorter to emphasize more grip strength. But I think doing it at race weight and being able to move quickly with your legs, I think there's a lot. Going heavy all the time, it's slowing the cadence down. So then if you're in the race and you're not used to like moving quicker with your legs, even though the weight is less, you're probably going to lose time on something for no reason. You know what I mean? So you have to practice your race weight, and you also maybe should do heavy stuff for shorter distances just to get the grip strength, especially if that's something you struggle with.
100%. Like this is an area where oftentimes female athletes will, when they're moving up to pro, this definitely seems like a space that can cause a lot of time to be left on the table. And it is very much it's easier to build up this type of strength than is a lot of others. Just like you were saying, just varying the intensity, going heavier. And this is an exercise. I also think of this with like croc row. Croc row would be like one arm. Like you can go way heavier than you can go. And so I always try to encourage people on the farmers. It's like, just pick it up and just like try to move with it a little bit, just so you can like feel it and gain a little bit of that confidence that you can go a little bit heavier, because it feels heavy at first, but once you do it, you're like, oh, okay, nice. I got this. You got the farmer's handles?
Like the fat grips?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, but also the kettlebells that I have at the gym are already fat grips.
So it still works, yeah.
And then the kettlebells I have at home are like the really slippery ones. And so when I do them, I also never use chalk, like just to like make it intense. They're still 50 pounds, but it's like to make it that much harder. And when you're sweaty, that shit sucks. It is hard to hold them. And I'll even go up my driveway when my driveway's a hill. So I'll go up and down the driveway. So I'm like also going at an incline. It's not that easy.
No.
But
so I like that. One tip that I just picked up while being in like doing some like CrossFit stuff is like depressing your traps. As I found, like as you go through like you're lifting it, so like you want to kind of shrug, right? And then you can get a lot of fatigue in your upper back that way. So if like thinking about pushing your shoulders down, it's not making the movement any harder, because it's just like in your hands. It's just like being more efficient through like your arms and not like kind of getting shruggy, so your upper back, and then you're moving less well because like you're too tense up top. So I've been thinking about that, just pressing my shoulders down to while holding, to try to keep a little bit more fluid.
And then just also like keeping your chest up more upright. I think we see a lot of people get like really hunched over, and to me, that's an immediate sign that the next thing coming is you dropping them. So like if you can keep your chest upright, it's just like if you're already like this and it's starting to get hard, like you're going to put them down because you're already bending over. You know what I mean? So it's just, again, just being more efficient. I think the quick steps come through the hips. So having like a little bit looser hips on this is also important, because I think that's like how I've found I can step really fast if I'm not like so tense through my hips, if that makes sense. So I'm keeping my upper body like tight. And like, I also do that thing you were saying where I keep my shoulders kind of like down, but I'm keeping my hips kind of loose so that I can move my feet quick. And I think that that's just like something helpful.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I want to talk about like kind of like the foot of it all. But let's stick with the upper body. I completely agree. Seeing people kind of get rounded is just like, okay, that's either too heavy or you're just in a bad position. Like try to put yourself in a better position before you put the weight down, or like don't ever get into that bad position. Unless it is just like literally at the end. Gotta get these down. So I think chest up, shoulders back, just stacking your skeletal system, right? That weight right at the side, right at like your side. With your hands, like I think over gripping could be a thing. I'll find myself sometimes clenching a little bit too hard. So I've now tried to make it the same way that we do on the road, like as little holding the weight with as little energy as possible. Right. And I also started to kind of think about, and you may have talked about this before, like turning the pinkies in. Like as a way to kind of like engage more in the lats. Like I use that kind of as like a last ditch. Like if I'm like really hurting, like, okay, now turn everything on and now let's stay real tight. So you want to speak about that?
Yeah. So your pinky is where like the majority of your grip strength is coming, and it is the first finger that will start to go when it's getting heavy. So that's a cue for me, as I'm always thinking about squeezing my pinkies. I also think if you grip it like on the handlebar where the bend is, if you can like grip it on the front, that actually makes it a little bit easier. And I like to really stack the handle right on the calluses of my hand, my palm.
Balanced there. You're not even,
it's
you're not even closing your hand.
And no, I'm seriously, it really helps. Like like super chalked up calluses, like those are not going down. You know what I mean? But I think if you can get like your grip really under it and like kind of use that spot in your hands and your fingers are doing a little bit less work, I think that that's really helpful.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. Like needing to use your strength in your hands as little as possible. Yeah,
for sure. For sure.
And always get chalk. Don't skip the chalk.
Always get chalk. It's worth the 2 seconds.
Yeah, just
And guys, you don't have to stand over the bucket and like go like this to get it off. Just fucking dip your hands in and get moving. It doesn't matter. I always see people like going like this and like getting the chalk out of their hands. I'm like, guys, we're not in a workout. Well, we're in a workout, but we're in a race. We're not like just in a wad. You know what I mean? Don't waste time.
If you're coming from like CrossFit or in a CrossFit gym where it might not, where it's like the bricks, right? And you might need to kind of get over there and kind of like fix it and like whatever. And it's nice to spend that time because you're basically resting.
You're catching your breath.
Yeah. But like the HYROX, it is incredibly fine. And and because you're all a little sweaty, it'll stick to you right away. Just like it is like a dip. And like you're fine.
Dip and go.
Or just like grab and a whatever and be on your way. Get chalk. Yeah, so with how, I guess one thing I did, or one thing I've kind of shifted from is trying to like run with my typical run form, you know, and turning it more into like a shuffle, right? And you mentioned like the hips of the whole thing. So I think it's something else to like not try to like run how you typically run.
For sure. Like, I think if you're trying, you got to take, it's like small steps. It's not like a big, like long stride, right? So it's got to be like small, quick steps. Like that's how you're going to get through it. Otherwise, like it's going to be slower if you're trying to take longer strides, because it's just, you're holding a significant amount of your own body weight in your hands. So like small, quick steps is like the way to get through this quickly.
I'm not too familiar with like rucking, but I believe that's how you ruck too.
Yeah.
Right? It's like,
I'm also not familiar with rucking, but Jared is. And so
he's right down the road.
He seems to do.
Yeah. You get better at it just by being near him.
Yeah.
Being in the same town, in the same county, you're better at
it.
Because Jared he's there. Yeah. So I think that's something too, like not trying to like run or like go as fast as you can, but not like with your running form.
Yes, definitely.
And what do you think about that too? Like, I've heard people say that they do better when they are more controlled with their pace. It's easier on their grip if they're like walking versus if they are running or like going faster, and they end up dropping it. Even though they're going faster, they're dropping it more because it's more taxing, because it's like more motion, I think is what's happening.
Okay.
So what do you think about that?
I could see that being a thing.
But still try to run?
I don't know. I think just work on it and practice and like just try to get like faster and faster. You know what I mean? And time yourself. So you have like splits to work off, and like, okay, today it took me this long to do 100 meters or 200 meters, like, and just keep working on it, you know?
Yeah. Maybe like if it's you're running and you are getting a lot of like bounce through like your elbows and you're not like depressed and like tight, maybe just like cleaning that up.
I would also say don't do that weird swing thing. Remember that video that was going around? Don't do that, guys. That's not how you do it. Like, and what are we doing here?
I think the idea was like you're like
using momentum, but then like on the way back, does it like push you back?
I don't know. A little bit,
right? Like I don't.
It can't like.
I had people like be like, "What do you think about this?" And I was like, "I think this is stupid. I'm sorry.
It doesn't look.
Looks kind of silly." I would be terrified, respectfully, if that works for that guy, then great. I would be terrified that I would throw one out of, it would fly out of my hand and I drill somebody. And then it's like, I just knock someone out and it's scary.
Is there a rule that where you put it down is where you have to start? Can you
throw it?
Can you throw it and then go get it? Just like throw it again. Maybe.
I think that's against the rules, but hey, there might not even be a judge there. I don't know.
There might not be a judge. There might not be in the rule book. Not cheating, not trying. Okay, cool. Yeah, I think that's really it. Just like the major mistakes. Yeah, just like stacking, not being stacked. Stack it up.
Yeah.
How about lunges?
Ooh, at this point, you're pretty tired. So this is a very high rep, high volume spot. So again, I think it just comes down to, I think people overload the lunges too much. I think they do heavy lunges, heavier than they need to, much in training. I think cadence again matters. And I think when it's the same with wall balls, and we've said this many times, there's a time to go heavier, but I think if you go heavier, it needs to be for shorter repetitions, because I think you will get stuck in a pace. So if your sandbag is 70 pounds and you're doing a women's pro and it's 50 pounds, you know, you're not going to be moving through each rep as quick as you would if it was like less weight. So I think you need to do time and place and understand that. And I think training at race weight for that distance is super important. And just getting used to that type of volume in training is going to be important. And that's just going to help make this smoother for you. I step through my lunges. Lunges is a very, very strong area for me. I have a very high level of single leg strength. So for me, this is like one of my favorite stations. I step through, but I actually kind of like drag my toe. So I'm kind of getting the relief of stopping at the top before the next, but I'm not actually doing it. And so it keeps me moving. Because I think when you do that pause, it's, again, everything can kind of be a trap. Like anytime you're taking like recovery, it can kind of be a trap because you think you're going through it fast, but it could have been 2 seconds. And if it's times 100 reps, that's, you know, maybe a lot of seconds adding up. It's definitely a relief though. So if you are someone who like really struggles with this, then that's the move. But I think for me, I'm always focusing on like, how do I get recovery, but optimizing that I'm continuously moving. So that's kind of how I approach it. And I think that's been really helpful for me because I think we can just get really stuck in the resting. And then a lot of time ends up going by. You know what I mean? And we're just kind of losing time.
I completely agree. And I think it's a lot like how with the burpees, like the psychological part of the rest matters a lot.
Yep.
And and like bringing your feet together and pausing at the top and resting after each rep. It's like a couple things, right? It's like yes, like it's like they didn't for like something like the sled push. I always recommend people do have a plan for their like recovery, right? For their rest. And it's usually, you know, after whatever, halfway, 3/4, one length, 10 steps. But there is a logical point where you take that relief in lunges. Like on the sled push, you wouldn't do it every step, like one step and then stop, one step and then stop. And that's basically what you're doing in lunges if you're stopping at the top every single time.
Yeah.
Right. You are going just like way too slow. You're resting way too often. So having some kind of plan there where even if it's 5 steps, whatever, 5 steps, it is 10 steps, like have something where you're either stepping through or dragging the foot, like you are saying in the back, like tapping the toe behind and not coming to complete neutral foot, neutral matched feet. Like, yes, you'll save a ton of time.
Yep, definitely. And I think so too. Like maybe it's 5, maybe it's 10, maybe it's every 20 meters, but definitely coming in with like a plan, because this is a spot where like if you've pushed it really hard in the beginning, especially like you're probably not feeling too hot right now. So it's like having a plan is always better than trying to wing it, because it can go so wrong if you're winging it, you know? I think same with wall balls too, which we'll get to, but it's like, this is the part of the race that's hard. Like we're almost there, but they're big numbers. It's a lot to wrap your brain around too. You know what I mean? So I think it's 100 meters and then 100 wall balls. Like those are big numbers. So having a plan and how to breaking it up for yourself is going to be way better for you psychologically.
100%. And that's because seeing how wide the time variance can be on lunges when you like literally can't put the weight down, it's like you're just standing there.
Yeah, you're standing there holding that weight on your back.
Right. And you're not coming off feeling that much better.
Right.
It's like I guess what would be a good example of this? In OCR, they talk about this sometimes, like getting through the obstacle is the best way. It's like the best way to use the least amount of energy to get through it as fast as possible.
Yeah.
You know, so like that could be the same kind of thing with these lunges. Like you just got to get through it. Like you're not saving your next run that much. Like it's going to suck either way, and you're loaded the whole time. So yeah, I think just getting through it.
For sure. And then just like gripping the handles, I think can be another thing that like people are not quite like. For me, I really hold it like very loosely in my fingers, and I think depending on like what your upper body is used to, if you're too tight, like again, it's just restricting blood flow in the arms. So there's been times where like I'll come off this and I'll put the thing down and I'm like, oh man, and I gotta like shake it out a little bit. So I think just like knowing what feels better for you. Some people hold it out wide. I don't like that. I like to be kind of tight, but like elbows kind of in.
The horizontal grip, not the vertical
Yeah.
grip.
Yeah, a little bit, or like a little bit of an elbow out, but I like to hold the front handles personally. But it's not like I don't feel like I have to grip them super like intensely with like squeezing my hands so much, if that makes sense. So I can keep my hands kind of loose.
I've definitely felt fatigue in like my forearms on because it's like row farmers into this and you're just like, the restricted blood flow. It's like, if I have to stop because my hands hurt on these lunges, I'm the worst.
Yeah.
But, can't rest. No, I think I completely agree. Just the resting position, the psychological aspect of it. In terms of like, is there anything that you see in terms of form? Is there that much you can really do? I guess sometimes it just depends. I used to kind of say this is a mistake, and I heard some feedback about it being like beneficial. Like as you're coming in the lunge, and when you're in the lunge position with your back knee on the ground and your front knee at whatever 90, the first movement coming up being kind of like your butt driving up, and then kind of doing like a little good morning as opposed to just driving straight up. I used to be like, don't do like the little back thing, because it is like you're doing 100 good mornings then. But if it is going to give your legs a little bit of a reprieve, then I see some benefit. But I might do that a little bit, but not a lot, and not on purpose. Any thoughts on like the actual form?
I definitely have my chest leaning forward because then that makes it more glute dominant. So like think about a Bulgarian split squat. If you're leaning forward more with your chest, then you're emphasizing the glutes over the quad. So you're getting more glute activation. So like your glutes are your strongest muscle that you have. It's the biggest muscle you have. It's for me, especially at this point in the race, it's my legs are taxed. Like my quads are taxed.
Yeah, we've been pretty quad.
I mean, pretty quad dominant, and like sled pull, super quad dominant. Push obviously is kind of everything, but and you have all the running. Like for me, I try to make it more of a glute focused than like quad. So if you're more upright and like more straight up with your chest and your back, it's going to be way more quad. So like that's just something I find that also helps me. So and you can play with it. Like you don't have to do the same thing every time. You can take a long step and then a shorter step. And then that's also going to kind of change what muscles are working more. And I think you can get a little relief even while you're moving. You know what I mean? So
yeah, I don't think there's one way. I agree. I used to be like, no, do like the lunge, the way that you do the lunge, but I don't think that's necessarily the case.
Yeah.
Just doing it however feels good.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Wall balls.
Go in with a plan always, please. Always. Don't do one big set of 50 because in practice you can do 50 in a row without putting the ball down. That is a terrible idea at this point. Always break before you feel like you absolutely have to, or before you're starting to get no repped. Break before that point, because if you don't, you're going to be standing there resting for much longer. And I think having a rep scheme in mind and sticking to it is going to be your best friend, because we've seen this go wrong for so many people. And I just had some clients compete the last couple weeks and they were like, I didn't have a plan for the wall balls and it went terrible. Again, if you nail this plan and then you feel like you can do more the next race, then amazing. That's like the best case scenario. So make the plan smart for you so you can achieve the plan. And then once you crush it, you can make adjustments like later. But
make it hittable.
Definitely have a plan. And if you do smaller chunks and you rest for less time and you can hold yourself really accountable on the rest, like count down from 5 is what I've always told my friends, like give yourself only 5 seconds, but do sets that you can only rest for 5 seconds. So maybe it's only 15 or maybe it's max 20, but you're going to get through it significantly faster that way.
Because you might think that you're doing resting for 5 or 10 seconds or whatever.
And it's like 20.
And it's like,
you know what I mean?
You're like one Mississippi.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it's like, 20 seconds. And that
Yeah.
is really what kills people here. It's like the
Yes.
speed of them. Yes. Like I think the speed of the wall balls matters when you have achieved a certain level of fitness, but really for the majority of people doing this, it's going to be how little you can break.
For sure.
How little, how
100%.
not even like you said, not even how little you can break in terms of how frequently you break, but literally how much time.
Yeah.
Because if you take 2 breaks, but it's like 30 seconds of rest each time versus 4 of like 5, like you're in a way better spot.
Absolutely.
In terms of like then form, things we talked about before, it's like distance to the target. I see people like way too far.
Too far.
They're literally pressing it out in front of them like it is a push press, where you want that to be as almost as vertical as possible.
Definitely.
So when you're catching it, you're right in line. It's not pulling you forward. You're not using your shoulders to press it out in front of you. Like, so you can use your hips to drive it up a little bit easier. Finding that good space in the target. How do you find where the appropriate place is for you when you're like standing to start?
Yeah. So of course, in practice, it's like the rule of thumb is like to hold the ball out and be able to touch the target, right, with it. So of course you kind of practice that. And then as you get used to it, you kind of know exactly where to be, for like what worked for you. And then I think also just like really working on the correct form. So like keeping the ball high, having 3 points of contact, which is your chin on the back and then a hand on each side, is also going to help make this so much more efficient. I think we see people like dropping it really low. It's like then you're doing like a front raise and then a push, like you're killing your shoulders. And then also if your chest is going forward, the biggest thing then is your glutes are also probably not going to get low enough, because automatically your butt is higher in that position.
Right. So
if your chest is further down, so your depth is going to be an issue, right? So it's like really working on the efficiency of form is going to help big time. And I know it's not that simple for some people, and people have their own, issues with this stuff, but like the better the form can be, the better it's going to go. So really emphasizing that is gonna make this better for you.
Just being comfortable in the squat.
In the squat.
And just like at the bottom, like you don't need to do wall balls to get better at wall balls necessarily.
For sure.
Obviously, there's a strength and conditioning component that honestly could be worked in separate pieces.
Yep.
But if you can be comfortable in an efficient position, it's just going to make such a difference. And I don't even know if that necessarily means just every time you do a wall ball, making sure you're getting into that optimal position, because it might not be that easy. But like spending time outside the wall balls, just like sitting in a squat, and just like keeping your chest up. If your ankles are tight, if your calves are tight, if it's like your hips or your low back, your upper back, whatever it is, like figuring that out first, because this is the place in the entire race that is going to be like the most limiting because of, whatever previous limitations you have or built up. So like you kind of need to undo some of that. You can't just outwork wall balls, honestly.
Yeah, definitely.
So spending time in that squat, figuring that out, and figuring out a good position to be in. Meg, for you, you have your toes are slightly turned out when you squat, right?
Just slightly, yeah.
Just slightly. So like, some people need to be turned out a lot more. Some people are better off straight. So playing around with your feet as well and figuring out what works
for
best
sure.
For that.
And how wide your hips are, or how wide your legs are out. So Camilla is a really good example because she's so tall. So she has really long femurs. And so she needs to go into a much wider stance position to get the depth. I'm someone who I have really, really good ankle mobility. So I can be much closer together. And that's how I back squat too. I'm very much just outside the shoulders. So I have a very narrow stance. And it's because I have really good ankle mobility that I'm able to do that. But you got to kind of toy with that too, depending on what your issue is. And I think sometimes going wider in the stance, if depth is really a problem for you, that actually can be really helpful. And sometimes you can get lower in that wider stance position. So that's another just tip that I've learned and I've tried to help people with.
Yeah, I love that. Just like figuring out, doesn't have to be one way. Like playing
right.
Stance.
For sure.
When you're throwing the ball, do you keep your arms up or you bring them right down?
I keep them up.
You keep them up. You just have, because your shoulders are just strong. You don't need to
jacked.
You're like waiting for that freaking fatigue to come. It's just not even happening. Just holding your arms up. I do bring my hands down basically as soon as I can. And this works more. I don't think this works as well for the 9 foot target.
It's hard on the 9 foot.
Yeah.
It's too short for me to bring my arms down and up. I've tried it.
Right.
Can't do it.
I will bring it down and then I bring it up to like my chin, right? My hands don't go much higher. So I just like catch it back at my chin and on the way down. But I still, you'll see Camilla again, she'll throw it up and she'll kind of like let her arms fall back behind her to get a little bit of a reprieve and then kind of come back up and catch, which I think is pretty smart just to be like loose up top.
Yep.
And I think that's just one thing that's just like kind of just staying loose more than anything than just like being tense and just like waiting for that ball to come back. So I think if you can throw it and just stay like as loose as you can to catch it back down is probably going to be a good benefit.
Don't squat before you catch the ball. Don't start squatting before you catch the ball. The ball's then going to be in the air longer, and that's going to take more time. I don't know why people do that. I see people doing that.
You're saying pull it
right to the chin. I think that's going to make it much quicker. For me, I think also the this part doesn't work for me because my squat cadence is very fast. So I'm using my leg drive a ton. And so when I'm throwing it, like my repetition cadence is very quick. So it's like by the time I'm like throwing it, I feel like I don't have time to put my arms down. You know what I mean? But that's coming from a lot of years of strength focus, like strength training focus and like powerlifting and like being explosive out of the bottom. So that has really helped me in the wall balls too. So like if you can work on your power from the squat position and your explosivity, that's also going to help translate in the wall balls as well.
Yeah, that's smart. Hips, it's a hip thing.
Yep.
This should be a hip movement, not a shoulder. Not,
I
mean, like it's quad, but like if you can drive through those hips and be explosive coming out of that squat. Yeah. So how would you train that? Like, is that when like the banded back squats, the box squats?
I think that's important. But I also think like just doing body weight squats, like really fast,
Doing it fast.
You know what I mean? Just really working on that high cadence repetition. I think that's very helpful. So it doesn't have to be like super heavy. But I think just doing that, I was actually helping Amy with that a little bit.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And I was like, do body weight squats, but like really emphasize like how fast you're going. You know what I mean? Like really work on the speed.
I think, like that's something you made mention of the lunges and the wall balls. Now it's like, yes, the cadence matters a lot.
Yeah.
And getting them done quicker is better.
For sure. Because this race, how many times have we seen it come down to the wall balls? So many, it's all the time it's coming down there. You can lose this race on the wall balls.
Yeah. You have major
You know what
swings.
I mean?
Yeah, totally. All right. I think we did it.
Sweet. Hope that helps, fam.
So put those into place. We got a bit of a break in the season now.
Yeah.
So
we do. And I'm going to be commentating the men's and women's races, the Elite 15 in Vegas. I am hyped. Guys, I think this is my future career move when I'm done being an athlete.
It's going to be in the booth.
I'm just in the booth, and I'm like, hey, guys, I'm expert Meg Jacoby. Here I am. I'm going to tell you all about these athletes because I know them personally.
That's really cool.
I'm really stoked.
You're going to be studying up? You're just going to be watching sports just for the sidelines?
For sure. I'm always because of this, I'm like, okay, I'm checking out the Frankfurt results because a lot of ladies raced there. That was a stacked field.
It was stacked.
Same with the men, like Bo and John Wynn ran great in Frankfurt. So yeah, it's fun. It's fun. And this is a really good way. I'm going to Vegas. I have some sponsorship stuff that I had to do. But I think this is a really great way for me to be involved. Because I feel like I'd be real depresso, just like kind of standing on the sidelines watching this and not being able to be a part of it. So I was like, I would love to be able to be a part of it in some way.
Totally.
So thanks, HYROX, for throwing me a bone. But
super fun. So we'll be in Vegas. Whole squad will be out there. In terms of racing, that's the next thing. And HYROX just has a bit of a break. Yeah, Frankfurt. Benny hit his doubles.
Benny hit his doubles.
61?
So they got I've never seen this happen in a normal division race, but they got a sled pull penalty.
Oh, is that what happened there? I was like, what?
So Benny hand
the
over hands the
pro
rope
weight?
because he's pro weight, dog. He's a big boy.
Let's relax.
That's my man. Biceps all day. So I think it was his partner, unfortunately, but they didn't get a warning, so they were a bit confused. But that sucks. It's for stepping in the back line. A 10-meter penalty in the sled pull. It's like a whole minute,
stupid
almost of time. You have to run to the other side, pull 5 meters, then run back, pull 5 meters the other way. I think why wouldn't you just stay on the one side and pull it 10 meters? I don't get that. Why do you have to go back and forth?
Two transitions.
The two transitions seems really ridiculous.
That just has to be like logistics, just so they can just be ready for the next person to come. Like, it doesn't make any sense. They should just tack something on to I guess.
Like, yeah.
I don't know.
I know it's tough, but I have not ever seen that happen outside of an elite race. So yeah, I was kind of shocked. I mean, like maybe a pro race with like elite people in it, but not like a doubles. You know what I mean? They weren't winning, so it was kind of like, okay, really? Like no one else did that? Probably everyone did. Just saying.
That's a bummer.
But anyway, I mean, at least some standards are being imposed. I mean, we can't be too upset about that. But
our girl Tia Toomey, or.
So Benny guessed their time he was off by 1 second.
Really?
Yep. I said 56:57. I said like somewhere in that range. And he exactly guessed almost exactly their time.
I got beat. I wonder what happened. I would love to see, like, it had to have just been the running, right?
I saw some clips. The other two teams seem to keep coming out of this. I mean, obviously Joanna and her partner, but they always came out first of the station. Good, so I would imagine that it was
little efficiency stuff. Just like the little tricks on the because the teams that beat him, Tom Rogers, he was Chris Woolley's partner who won the pro doubles, and then Meg Martin was part of this other team, and she was on a team that qualified for the Elite 15 race as well, and she's like pretty good. So these are good teams. These are good teams. It's nice.
Yeah,
nice that she didn't come and crush.
Yeah.
We don't mind.
Very cool. Very cool. Very cool for the sport.
Totally.
I mean,
amazing.
Yeah. Very nice. I still want to see her in a pro women's race though.
I think she'd do great.
I think so too.
We'll see. We'll see. Hopefully at one point, but who knows?
Probably. I would imagine, right? I mean.
All right. That'll wrap us up. Make sure you're checking out the RMR Training app. Check out our RMR Training Essentials Guide. We have a free download for our 5 favorite workouts that we do. We talk about a lot here, but just a place for you to download them just so you have for your reference. And ESN, Puma.
Amazfit.
You got your watch.
Amazfit. Got my watch.
What else? You stacking them?
Concept 2.
Yeah, you wish. All right.
I am. I'm working with them a little bit.
Are you really?
Yeah. And I'm doing something with them in Vegas.
Oh, cool. Dang. Nice. This is a good one.
Hey, I'm trying,
That's a good one. Got to get
trying out here, hustling.
Out that on that hustle. I know about it. All right. We'll talk to you all soon.